if I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, thinking up about the same mistake. Darling, where you going? It won't be as simple for you.
Yo, guys. It's Old Man G here, RDS, back again with another sales update. And what I think is a significant update on the sale process. I'm joined again by who's becoming the GOAT journalist. Let's be frank, at Tom the Journalist, who, when we get into it, called it. Tom called it with the news that we've got coming in. Tom did call it. So first of all, I want to just shout out Tom the Journalist again as well. He's been really, really good with regarding this whole sales process. Tom, buddy, how you doing? And yeah, thanks for joining again, man.
Yeah, no worries. As always, I'm happy to come on your platform and speak to your viewers and subscribers around what's going on, and I guess provide some balance and some clarity as to actually what's going on. So yeah, appreciate it as always.
No, I really appreciate it. And remember, guys, if you are new to channel, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter at WeAreUnitedX. Smash the notification button. Twitch channels and secondary channels are in the link below. And make sure you obviously check out and follow Tom at TomJournalist1, as you can see his Twitter handle. Shout out to those who are in the chat as well. Obviously, the regulars I see, Lucky, Singh, Jamie, Gene, I think, as well as there as well. Niall, and so on, Scott, etc. Thanks again, really appreciating it. I think there's a lot of anticipation regarding the Takeover news, obviously in a certain person's favor. So let's just get straight into it. Obviously, the title being SHEIKH JASSIM Winning, Sir Jim Ratcliffe Losing, Manual of Sale update. So Tom, what can you basically tell everyone, the audience, like the significant update from what you've heard today?
Well, the update is that from what we got around lunchtime today from sources that we've used close to Ineos, myself and colleagues, and the delegation there, is that there has been a feeling over the last few days, really, within the camp that they aren't no longer the front runners within the race. And this comes after the fact of, as I'd reported before previously, that after the SHEIKH JASSIM fifth bid, the Rain Group and the Glazer family, who Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos had been speaking to personally, there was in constant dialogue and contact with. It was direct, it wasn't through intermediaries. And there was some reports stating that Sir Jim Ratcliffe had actually been to New York and certain things like that. That I can't confirm myself, but, it is rumours and it's in the turmoil, really. And the Glazer family, ever since the fifth offer came in from SHEIKH JASSIM, the communication between Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos and the Rain Group and the Glazer family, that communication line hasn't existed for, as I said before, well over a week. And really, and coming up to it, when you've had constant dialogue and for weeks on end, and you'd been negotiating the terms of a deal, as I say, he was preferred bidder privately. They were prepared to go public at one stage with him. And they were negotiating the terms of his deal and the different options, because he put an option for 69% on the table at a reduced figure. He put a 60% proposal on the table, and then he put a 50 plus 1% proposal on the table. So there's different percentages and proposals, all for which have different price tags and different ranges in terms of how much he's willing to spend for a certain percentage. And him and Ineos had been discussing with Rain over the deal and the terms of the agreement for upwards of 3 weeks, and they've never come to an agreement in those 3 weeks. And the growing consensus around, and there was concerns, as I'd reported previously, by Sir Dave Brailsford, who's played a leading figure role within the Ineos delegation to try and acquire Manchester United. And he'd actually been quoted in saying that maybe their offer had been used as a pawn in a bigger game of chess, was the sort of wording that was coming out from the Ineos camp not so long ago. And there is a concern from the Ineos delegation that the Qataris have made their move. They've put their big offer that the Ineos group wanted to avoid. Hence, they didn't go for a direct race and try and buy the whole thing against the Qataris. So they thought the easiest way that we can try to beat them is we use a bit of tactics and potentially keep the Glazer family in. And ever since that big move now, really, the voice coming out of the Ineos camp is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have been pushed to the point of no return. And the delegation had been optimistic for weeks that a deal could have been done. And before Sheikh Jassim had put in his fifth and final offer, the Ineos group believed that they was 1-2 weeks away from a full agreement on terms, in terms of any of the percentages or the offers that were on the table. They was in positive discussions. That's the one thing that we always heard. Every journalist was reporting about it, that Ratcliffe was in the front seat, he's in the hot seat, the negotiations have been going well, so forth. And all in all, to summarise, I guess, that there is a worry within Ineos and the camp that they might be unsuccessful. And there was a report that came out late last night from I think it was Nice Martin, which is a Nice-based newspaper, for which hasn't supported the owner in terms of who owns that City Football Club. They've actually gone against it in terms of he might not be successful within his takeover, and there is a growing concern. And that message had been relayed to us from the US. And the likelihood of Ineos putting in another bid is very unlikely because, as I say, they've put the terms and the negotiations of the finances in place. But the only thing they can do is change the terms of their proposal. But as we reiterated last time when I discussed around the sort of legal backlash that any of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's proposal faces, with how it affects the shareholders if the Glazers were to stay in a partnership with him, is if he was to taint and tamper with the terms and conditions around his offers that he's put in already, he's going to potentially cause a bigger issue legally, in which he might have to be liable to more than what he would be right now with the proposals that are set right now. So he can change the offer. Of course he can change the offer. He can say for 50%, I'll pay a bit more or something like that here and now or later down the line or something. Of course he can do that. But the legal backlash of doing that means that the parties, if the New York Stock Exchange stakeholders and shareholders, if they wanted to take Sir Jim Ratcliffe to court and the Glazer family over how this proposal affects them, they could liably sue both parties for more money than what they can actually right now. And, the Ineos have to look at this, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe has to look at this as a personal level. Yes, they want Manchester United Football Club. They've come this far in the process. But there's a bigger price to pay than buying this football club. And if they were to lose a legal battle, it would potentially damage Ineos as a brand and the company, not just financially, but the reputation of the company and the sort of business deals that they would do within the US, because they do work within the US markets as a company. So the ramifications go wider than just law and logistics and the finances. It would impact the whole company based upon trying to buy a football club. And yes, I do use the term a football club, which might seem a bit condescending to Manchester United fans around being the biggest club in the world. But the way the Glazer family have treated the process, they just treat it as if it's, your average football club, which of course it isn't. But ultimately and overall, the concern within the Ineos camp is there that they are no longer the front runners. And there is a sense of urgency and panic around Sir Jim Ratcliffe and with the Ineos delegation, for which throughout the whole process we have never seen. Even when the links were coming out that the Qataris could blow any bidder out of the water, they were still sitting, proud. There wasn't any concerns or nervousness. And as I said before, you will know who's in the hot seat and who's winning based upon who speaks first, in the manner of they try and word things or put things come out in terms of that they aren't successful. So when the rumours were coming around the money, if they're unsuccessful in buying Manchester United, will be invested into Nice, you can look at that and say that's using it as an exit clause. Just in the same way as you see now, where there's a concern within the camp that they might not win, which that's never come out before. And that has come directly from the Sir Jim Ratcliffe camp. It's not as if it's a made-up thing in a PR battle against Qatar and the Sheikh. It's come directly from his camp, for which you look at that and you think it doesn't fill you with confidence if you're on that team and that delegation, for which the offer that you're already proposing might be illegal under the New York Stock Exchange guidelines, but also it could have ramifications for future business that you ever do within the US, for which it's a hefty price to pay just for a football club.
Thank you for that, Tom. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot to unpack with what you basically said. And obviously, for those in the comments, if you have questions for Tom, please get them in. Obviously, we'll be live for still a little bit. And remember, guys, there's almost 80 plus people watching. Make sure you like that vid. It helps with the engagement. We have arguably the GOAT journalist of this sales update on the channel. So please make sure that you like the vid. Helps the engagement and get more people involved in the channel. So I guess the first question I ask is, because I'm already seeing some stuff, a few things on Twitter I'm seeing with like the rain imminent announcements and stuff like that. I'm not sure how reliable that is in terms of imminent announcement on a takeover or something. I don't know, but how can I phrase this in a way? Given all the complications that Sir Jim is going to have, potentially legal battles, etc. Like, do you think that this is a significant? Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that, like, do you think that the Glazers are really going to really have the energy, really have the patience and the time to deal with what will be a lot of significant legal ramifications regarding the Jim bid, as opposed to, say, the Qatar situation? If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, and the best answer that I can give to that is yes, of course. When you think about a legal battle, if it's just your average person, myself or yourself, if you go to court, you hire a solicitor. You're having to hire money and hire people to defend you as an individual, or you as a family or business group, whatever. So Jim Ratcliffe, it's not as in it's at the level that it's just an individual. This is multi-billion pound. This is a multi-billion pound football club that you're dealing with, a multi-billion pound exchanges in New York Stock Exchange, and multi-billionaires in terms of Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Yeah, he's a successful British businessman. He was Britain's richest man for God knows how many years, and he has a net worth of over 20 billion. But the ramifications of how this looks, and especially from the Glazer family's point of view, is the consensus that we got, especially from the Glazer family side, was sources to their personal advisors, Rothschilds, who are the Glazer family's personal financial aides and have been for over 10 years, for those of the people that want to know. They confirmed to us that they themselves, Rain Group and the Glazer family, have been looking over this Sir Jim Ratcliffe deal for weeks, and the family and the Glazer family are very aware of the legal issues that the proposal faces, and that they, as a family, if that's the way that they went down, would be implicated in the proposal and implicated in the legal issue. And it could be, in essence, they're forced to pay millions of pounds in law fees, so they're going to lose money. And they're possibly going to, if they end up losing the legal battle, potentially have to pay up to £1 billion to the New York Stock Exchange to distribute between the stakeholders in a settlement. And when you look at that, this has played a massive hand in the Glazer family's decision making, is from what we've been told. And all US sources who we've been using to cover the takeover from this point stage now are pointing towards a successful Sheikh Jassim bid. And the legal case and the implications, if it would be and could be proven to be illegal via New York Stock Exchange's regulations, then it has come as a massive stumbling block to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And as we say about this with the legal battle, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, as I'd reiterated last time, when I spoke to somebody who was very aware of how the Premier League guidelines work and UEFA's guidelines, they instigated to myself that Ineos's bid would be a lot harder to pass through all the governing bodies and also against the legal battle in comparison to Sheikh Jassim, where the only real issue that he has to prove is he's a disparate, he's a private individual from QSI and he doesn't have any links to the running of PSG, and PSG ownership wouldn't have any runnings to Manchester United. And that's really the only stumbling block around the Sheikh Jassim bid. So, in comparison, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has the legal case. He also has Premier League scrutiny around the debt to buy the football club and where that debt will go, because, as we say, the laws have changed. You can't have a leveraged buyout and take the debt and put it onto a football club. It's illegal to do so now. So, in essence, you wouldn't have what happened to Manchester United 18 years ago with the Glazer family. The Glazer family wouldn't be able to do that right now if they were wishing to do so again. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe would also have to pass UEFA's club regulations, for which he already owns a football club in OGC Nice. And you can say it for what it is. He owns two football clubs. He owns Lausanne in Switzerland. So he does have complications in terms of he already owns teams, one of whom in Nice is a progressive team where they can be in a European competition, potentially with Manchester United at some point in time. And the news coming out around the Glazer family is all the advisors, including the Rothschilds, the Rain Group, after Sheikh Jassim's latest offer, the legal team that are around the Glazer family, all of the different advisors have pushed for them to go with Sheikh Jassim's latest offer, this fifth and final offer, for which hasn't been the case in the last 3 weeks. They were pushing more towards Sir Jim Ratcliffe. That was before the legal battle and the different stakeholders via New York Stock Exchange had put a court settlement in place and an injunction where if the proposal is to be put through and go through to Sir Jim, the stakeholders will take them to the court. And they have a good chance of winning if they break the regulations. So really and ultimately, the development is, and it gives the impression of that the Glazer family are thinking and taking into account all the different elements around both bids, and both bids are going to come with scrutiny and pressure. But the one thing that you can say is, in terms of passing it through a governing body like the Premier League and UEFA, you can pass and bypass, say, a human rights allegation against the Qatari bid. And if there's no links in terms of government funding to the Sheikh Jassim offer, that's another box ticked. And really, there isn't any other pressure that you can put on the Qatari offer because it's set in stone what it is. Private individual bid, foundational company, funding is there via high net worth individuals, not just Sheikh Jassim. So, in terms of that side of things, that's the pressure on the Qatari offer. The Sir Jim Ratcliffe offer, as I've already said, there's the Premier League around the debt. There's the Premier League around where the debt goes. There's UEFA around Nice and Lausanne, which Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos would have to provide clarity on what they're wishing to do with those two football clubs. And then, as I say, there's the big legal battle, which could cost millions. If they lose, it would cost both parties in the Glazer family and Sir Jim at least £1 billion, or in that ballpark figure. And suddenly, if they were to buy Manchester United and they still have this legal battle hanging there, in Sir Jim Ratcliffe's case, if he was to lose that, that impacts Ineos, and Ineos would be the main funder to fund Manchester United. And hence why the Premier League and UEFA, if a legal battle would be ensued, I don't really think the Premier League and UEFA are going to sit around and let one of their greatest establishments, either in the Premier League or in Europe with UEFA, in Manchester United, just sit around and be in a legal limbo. I don't think they're going to do that. Not with how they try and protect clubs nowadays. And it's the crown jewels of English football. So Manchester United, if that's an effect and that's a taintment, the viewership that Manchester United would get, you wouldn't get that in Premier League. You wouldn't get that in Europe. Fans would distance themselves from the football club because of the scrutiny that's on them right now. And ultimately and overall, the advisors around the Glazer family are insisting Sheikh Jassim's offer is a lot easier. It's a better offer financially in the short term. And also, you will never have to hear your name chanted, protested outside Old Trafford as a family ever again, because you would have nothing to do with that football club again. And you're going to become very wealthy from it. So, as I say, all US sources are pointing towards a successful Sheikh Jassim bid. However, that's not in terms of an announcement. That's just where all the fingers are pointing due to the context that I've just given around Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the situation that's happening there.
Thanks again for that, Tom. Man, really appreciate it. Just going to quickly look at some comments before we go into it. But actually, one a question before actually going to the comments. Remember, guys, if you have any questions, well, two things. Remember, like the video and subscribe. That's the first thing. And second, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to go for the comments in a second. I'm going to ask one final question before going to the comments. So is this essentially it for sort of Sir Jim Ratcliffe in the sense that if, much like a couple of weeks ago, Sir Jim Ratcliffe was ahead and then Sheikh Jassim put in that, premium offer bid, left on the table, goodbye, whatever. Are we assuming now that like Sir Jim Ratcliffe literally doesn't have anything else to give? Like, is there any way, hypothetically, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe could maneuver himself that he could somehow outbid or outmaneuver Sheikh Jassim still? Is that still a possibility?
It's still a possibility if he wants to renegotiate the percentages and how much he gives. So, for example, let me just hypothetically, this isn't official figures in terms of what I'm going to state here. Say the club is valued at £6 billion for what the Glazer family want. The Glazers own 69% of the shares. So Jim Ratcliffe proposes, I'll buy 50% for £3.5 billion. And if that was to go through, the Glazer family would keep 19%, or you could round it up to 20%. And then Sir Jim Ratcliffe would own 50%, but the legal battle would be tight on him because if that figure has increased, say if he was only offering 3 billion before, and then he's offered it another 500 million pounds so that he values it more in the long term of a buyout than Sheikh Jassim. So therefore the Glazer family would get more money in the long term rather than in the short term with Sheikh Jassim right now. If he was to do that, he would probably get the football club ahead of the Qataris if they weren't to bid again or increase their offer. But it would mean that the legal battle against Sir Jim Ratcliffe would favour the New York stock traders and shareholders a lot more than it would Sir Jim. And if that was the case, and he did increase the offer in terms of the shares that he wants to buy for the valuation of 50% of the shares, then, as I say, the minority stakeholders and the shareholders via New York Stock Exchange, they can demand a settlement more than £1 billion. So effectively, it's not really, how can I say, it's not a win-win, but it's also not a lose-lose because Sir Jim Ratcliffe still gives the Glazer family the option of they can stay. That is the only real thing that I can sit here and say right now that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has to hold on to. And if I'm being completely honest, if he wanted to beat the Qataris, buy the whole thing now. Buy the 69% and bid higher than what Sheikh Jassim has bid. If you want to avoid the legal battle, so that's the biggest problem that you would have. The legal battle is a bigger problem than the scrutiny that he would get from UEFA over Nice and what he plans to do with them, and the debt investigation that the Premier League would do around where that debt goes, because it can't go on Manchester United. If he was to buy the whole club, the legal battle doesn't exist anymore, because the shareholders, as I say, would be able to accurately value their shares, and they can still trade and sell their shares at whatever price that the valuation of Manchester United is set at. The only difference is you would just have a different owner. You would have Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who would effectively own Manchester United, and it would still be on New York Stock Exchange. So it's business as usual, essentially. But as I say, if he wants to buy in a percentage of it, you have Sir Jim Ratcliffe that owns, say, 50%, the Glazers own 20%, but you don't know what kind of class shares they own. Is it Class A? Is it Class B? For which, if they don't know what type of share, if the minority stakeholders don't know what shares the majority owners of Manchester United own, they can't value what their shares are worth, for which breaks the New York Stock Exchange guidelines. And when you get to that sort of point, that's when it comes a lot more technical in terms of the legal case strangling Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazer family. It would almost be they're walking in there already knowing they're going to lose. There'd literally be no point in putting up a fight. So unless Sir Jim Ratcliffe has £1 billion sitting around to pay out in a settlement, then really, I think it is checkmate on him, if I'm being perfectly honest. And as I say, if he wants this football club that badly, then he's going to have to really not break the law, but he's going to have to break the New York Stock Exchange guidelines to get the football club. But the only thing I say is, you have Sheikh Jassim from the very start. We know what he wants. I want to buy the whole club. I'm not interested in keeping any member of the Glazer family in. It's all or nothing. Simple as that. So Jim Ratcliffe came in with the same stance, and then he backtracked because he realised he'd undervalued the football club, and he also didn't have the right finances in place to pay the full £6 billion in one go, in which he's had to come up with this proposal where it means he has a fighting chance of getting the club, but it also means that he then has a legal battle that he potentially has to attain up to and face up to. So ultimately, overall, to answer that question, G, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has things that he can do, but anything that he does from this point is going to harm him in the long term if he was to be successful to get the football club. And that's why when people are buying and trading, shares and stock in Manchester United via New York Stock Exchange, that's why a lot of people are gambling that Sheikh Jassim is going to win, because all the cards are stacked against Sir Jim. He has a legal battle, which, pardon my French, if he goes into that legal battle, I think he's fucked. I really do think he would be screwed over. And I think he would have to pay out the settlement because it's illegal. The guidelines don't initiate it. The Glazer family know how the guidelines work. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed up to put the club on New York Stock Exchange and sell a portion of the shares that they owned. So they know how the stock market works, the Glazer family anyway. So Jim Ratcliffe, I don't know if he knows how the markets work around stock and trading, but the business deals that he would do in the US, a lot of US businessmen, if they know that he's illegally and illicitly attained a publicly traded company and broke the guidelines of New York Stock Exchange, any business that Ineos as a company want to do in the US will be harbored because of that. Because they will look at that and they think, we can't trust this guy. How can we trust this guy when he completely snaked, a lot of people have a lot of money, one of which in a percentage is a hedge fund, which, manages assets over probably 100 billion US dollars in assets. You snake somebody like that and a firm like that, you're gonna stab, your average businessman in the back, aren't you? Let's be honest.
Thanks again for that, Tom, and really, really, really appreciate the clarity around the whole process. And I think for a while, sorry, with my cough. I think, to be honest, it's kind of like we said for a few weeks, and you've kind of alluded to while you've done these kind of live shows, is that it just really doesn't make sense that, the Glazers put the club essentially up for sale or signing up for sale last November. And it really doesn't make sense that that they will still take this long. I know there's been some indecision regarding Joe and Abram, that's been part of it, but clearly there must be some reservations regarding the Jim bid. Otherwise, I can't see any logical reason why he wouldn't have been announced at least a month ago, given what he offered and the ability to keep the Glazers, either Joe and Abram, but also the other family members potentially at the club. So the fact that they've looked that there potentially could be legal ramifications for Jim Ratcliffe's bid on top of everything regarding Ineos, on top of the fact that Sheikh Jassim presumably has made an offer closer to the valuation of the football club, I just can't see a way. And I guess also the thing is as well is that, like, is there any, we don't definitively know 100% that Qatar wouldn't even up their bid. Do we definitively know? I'm not saying that Qatar is unfavored, but do we know 100% that they wouldn't up their bid? Like, I just get the overall impression that while I think both parties want Manchester United, the Qataris, in my opinion, seem more determined for it, and have had more forethought, I guess, in it than say the Ineos group, who I suspect, as you said, he undervalued Manchester United. Then it was like, oop, okay, well, I think the only way I'm going to get it is by keeping the Glazers in. And then there wasn't really much for after that because they thought they'd won. Is that is that fair?
No, it's fair what you've said. And I mean, around it all, the Qatari stance, every single bidding round, like when the first 3 official bidding rounds were, the Qataris and Sir Jim Ratcliffe both put in clauses to state that they're willing to negotiate. They will put a figure in place. There's the proof of funds to show that where the financing is coming from to actually do the deal. And then there's a negotiation clause. For the whole 3 rounds of bids, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has sustained there is a negotiation clause. I will negotiate a deal. Whether that be I come up or you come down, I'm willing to negotiate. Sheikh Jassim took the same stance for those first 3 bids. I'm willing to negotiate. It then got to that stage where Sir Jim Ratcliffe was in the hot seat. He had the better proposal. He had more money coming in terms of the long term for the Glazer family. It was the better deal. I'll admit in saying that. From there, the direct communication line was built between the Glazer family and Sheikh Jassim's camp and him personally. And from there, they insisted that you're not going to get this football club unless you bid again. They went completely round, behind his back, really, and the delegation's back. And they went and spoke to probably the most influential person within Europe regarding Qatar, in Nasser Al-Khalifi, and put a few phone calls back home. And can you get Sheikh Jassim to up his bid? He didn't play the middleman role that the Glazer family wanted, but I would be shocked if he didn't at least make a phone call back to somebody back home and, if you like, pass the messenger. The overall stance from Qatar when they put the 5th bid in was, that's it. We're not going anymore. So if you pick us at that price. We're not going to negotiate in. The negotiation clause that we had for the first, second, third, and even the 4th improved offer, which was outside of the official bids, all had negotiation clauses in. If you wanted to negotiate and get more money out of us, you should have done it a long time ago when you should have picked us, and we'd have done a deal with you. You know what we're about. We've got the money to buy the football club. That was the Qatari stance. That was the Sheikh Jassim delegation stance. And they put the 5th offer in out of frustration. And you can say it was desperation because they thought they were going to lose the football club. Desperation, frustration, or maybe arrogance. You can look at it from whatever, but the stance from the Qatari side was, after the 4th round of bid, was, we don't want to lose at all costs. We can't lose. That was the thing. And if we're going to lose, we're going to do everything that we can to show that we did everything that was humanly possible. And they, if you like, initiated an exit clause for, well, we put the money on the table, but if they don't pick us, we can always fall back on the sword of, Well, the Glazer family never wanted to sell anyway. I guess that's the sword that the Qataris can always fall back on and say, well, they never wanted to sell. That's the one thing that they can fall back on, because Sir Jim Ratcliffe doesn't have the finance in place to buy all 69%, not at the rating that the Glazer family are instigating for, not in the short term anyway. So you can look at it from that point, but the stance that I got after the fifth bid was, it's the fifth offer, it's take it or leave it, and we're not negotiating. After they put the bid in on a Wednesday, and then on the Friday, that's it. If you don't contact us by Friday, the offer's on the table, but we're distancing ourselves, and we're going on a complete blackout. We're not speaking, we're not communicating with Rain, intermediaries, anybody like that. If you want to do with the deal, you can do the legwork and you can come to us. That was the Qatari stance, and it has been from the rest of the time. And ever since that point, when that bid went in, the conversations before that bid, on the Monday, on the Tuesday, and even on the Wednesday when the bid actually went in from Sheikh Jassim, the group was still speaking. Sir Jim Ratcliffe was still speaking to Rain and the Glazer family directly. When that fifth bid went in, the communications completely shut off. Ratcliffe and Ineos have been putting the feelers out, wanting an update from Rain or the Glazer family, but they've had no responses. Sir Jim, and in Sheikh Jassim's case, he's not had a response either. So something that has happened with that deal has made the whole proposal and the whole communication shut off from both sides. So effectively, Sheikh Jassim right now, I think he's sitting in his palace wherever in Qatar with his family and friends,
chilling.
Chilling with his feet up, because I think at this point now, he's done the big offer that he can. And now it's a case of, do the Glazer family really want to sell? If they really want to sell, and they have always wanted to sell throughout, they'll sell to Sheikh Jassim, because he's put the big offer, he's put the big money on the table, as far as I'm aware anyway. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he gives them the option to stay. So really and ultimately, it's depending on what the Glazer family want to do. And the message that I've always had from the start of the process in November to now has always been the same point, from the US, from the Middle East, from sources at the Premier League, all over. The Glazer family, as a family, are in agreement. We'll sell at a set price, £6 billion. If you come close to that, we'll consider it. If you come bang on that, we're out of here and we're done. That's always been the message around the Glazer family. We get the money we're looking for, we're happy to go, no problem. But if we don't, well, we'll either stay and we'll find financing from somewhere else, or we'll partner with somebody. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe is the best partner that's in the process, aside from the minority investment groups, for which we haven't spoken about for weeks and haven't even been mentioned. And the unrest is there, really. So the best way to summarise is Sheikh Jassim's sitting pretty comfy right now. He knows he's done all that he can. And if the offer, if this fifth and final offer, which has no negotiations, it's you take it or leave it, it's as simple as that. If the Glazer family don't go for that now, they won't get that money again. And if the indication that comes from Sheikh Jassim, or he's told directly, or the message is put out there publicly that the Glazer family go with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he'll pull the whole plug on the thing. The offer won't stand, and he'll be distancing himself from the whole process. And that's that. There won't be any Sheikh Jassim interested in buying Manchester United. It will be over. And I would probably expect the same thing for Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I'd be very surprised and shocked if Sir Jim Ratcliffe sat around and still had his proposals on the table if the Glazer family had decided to go elsewhere with somebody else. So the message in the update is Sheikh Jassim's pretty comfortable. The delegation is pretty comfortable that they've done all that they can. Now, it's not a case of, right, let's get the most money. Who's bidding the most? We know who's bidded the most, really. Both of them have valued it close to 6 in terms of their most recent offers. But one's for short term, one's for long term. And now it's about preference. Do the Glazer family, are they all in agreement that the price Sheikh Jassim's put in place is near enough what they want or exactly what they want? Or do some of them have reservations about leaving Manchester United right now when the club could grow in 4 or 5 years' time? They could get a bigger payout then and get a bit of money here and now from Sir Jim. Now it's down to preference. And from what I've always known, all 6 will sell at one price. And when you hear sort of news around that, I don't really think that if the money is put on the table, I don't see how they can turn it down and say that we'll stay with all the problems and a legal battle and, you know, the embargo with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. It just doesn't make sense. There's far too many complications, and you're going to effectively lose money in a legal battle with Sir Jim that you might not even win, and yet you can gain billions from Sheikh Jassim, for which there's no legal trouble at all. You've just got to pass it through the Premier League, and he's just got to prove that he's separate from PSG, for which, when he entered the process, he wouldn't have entered the process and his delegation wouldn't have bidded for this football club if they couldn't separate themselves from PSG. So, alas, you come to the conclusion that if the Glazer family want to stay, they can, Sir Jim. If they all want to go and the price fits them, Sheikh Jassim. And as I say, all US sources and all the hype coming around from the US where this deal has been, you know, negotiated and marketed, all fingers are pointing towards a successful Sheikh Jassim bid.
Fair enough, Tom. Thank you so much. Right, let me quickly go to some questions because I know a lot of people got some questions. I see a question, Sheikh Ariane. Don't worry, I see a question. We'll get to it. Okay, we'll go for the questions now. So first one, I'm just thinking. So I don't know whether you noticed this, Tom. There's some Wall Street Journal article talking. Have you noticed something from Wall Street or something that's going on the rounds?
Not from the Wall Street Journal. Not that I know of now.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I'll just quickly move on. So if there is something, Steve, then either DM me on Twitter at WeUnitedX or post a link or something. So, but we can't find anything. Jamie says, Tom, I just saw on Twitter that the documents are done. Also, the Premier League groups we've announced them this week is incoming. I mean, again, probably unlikely.
Yeah. It's unlikely. Yeah, as I said before, when the Glazer family actually make their minds up, you're 50% through this whole saga takeover process. And that might annoy a lot of Manchester United fans. That's just how the Glazer family have run this process, unfortunately. Greed and spite has led them to this long in the process. And if I'm being fair, an average takeover at any scale of a football club normally takes 9 months. But by the 5th, 6th month, you already know who you're selling it to, essentially. And then the rest of the months is just negotiations and processing the deal and then signing on the dotted line. And as I say, when the Glazer family decide who they want to go with, that's when I think the process will speed up. And I think the Glazer family will instigate to the Premier League that they want this on their day, you know, on the Premier League's table, and that's the most important priority. In the same way that the group who is selected would go to UEFA and say, listen, check us out. We've got no links to PSG, or this is what we're going to do with Nice, yada, yada, and so forth. And then the Glazer family would make, you know, the announcement from there. But even if a party's picked, I mean, there's no guarantee that the Glazer family would even announce it, or it would even be like publicly announced via Rain, via the Glazer family, via Manchester United website. Like, there's no guarantee that that's going to be the case, but it could be instigated privately, and that us as journalists, we pick up on in terms of the noises coming from the US markets or from sources close to the groups or from the Glazer families, you know, inner circle, as I say, with their advisors. If a message is relayed from one of those circles and parties, and then suddenly you get 3-4 journalists who are basically stating the same story, like the incident around that would instigate that the Glazer family have made their mind up. And the only thing I'm saying is, whenever Sir Jim Ratcliffe was in the hot seat, notice how all of the British journos and all of the media outlets in the UK were blowing up. They had an article out pretty much every 2 days, They had a new article out. Sir Jim Ratcliffe this, Sir Jim Ratcliffe that, Sir Jim this, Sir Jim that. When Sheikh Jassim has ever seemed to have been ahead or he's put a new bid in, everything's gone quiet. They don't ever report on it. And the only reports that you've ever heard have either come from the US in terms of where the sale's being based from, such as Reuters, or from the Qatari media, where you had the Al Watan publication and things like that. So you can say that they're backing their own people, they're backing their own boy, but the pendulum has swung. I'm not going to deny in saying that. There is a lot more momentum towards Sheikh Jassim than there is Sir Jim. But this thing around the documents and an announcement incoming and things like that, like, there's no deadlines. I'm not going to come on here and say it's going to be Friday at 3 p.m. or anything like that. And, if it is, then I might as well put a lottery ticket on if I'm getting that lucky, to be honest. But, it really is a stab in the dark if you want to put your neck out on the line and say things like that. But I'm not going to come here and do that because I don't know it for factual. So at the end of the day, the message that I've always had with the Glazer family is when they make their mind up about something, they're going to announce it and decide upon it on their terms. And they don't care who they annoy or who they frustrate or, pardon my language, piss off. It's effectively their way or the highway. So the Glazer family will announce it when they think it's best to announce, not when it suits somebody else.
Thank you for that, Tom. Let's see the next question. And Danny Joseph says, I want to ask if there's any rules that can force the family, as Jim Glazer family, to sell since the fans are not happy with them.
In terms of force them to sell, I don't really think there's nothing that springs to mind anyway that I believe that they would be forced into selling. The only thing that I could really have said would have been maybe potentially if the Glazer family had a similar situation to what Roman Abramovich had. Like, there was external financing coming into the football club that wasn't from their own pocket or themselves. But the Glazer family don't even put their own money in, so God knows where the money is going to come from elsewhere. Like you say, there is obviously, like, in recent times, especially with today, with what happened with Chelsea, for example, they sold like 4 players to Saudi Arabia today. And people will question the links between Saudi's investment into Chelsea's, majority stakeholder, Clear Lake, who owns Chelsea Football Club. And, you put the dots together and you come up with loads of different theories and conspiracies. But I can't think of anything that can force the Glazer family to sell, really, because they've always been able to take dividends. They've always been able to sustainably still run Manchester United, even though it's been, the peaks of debt and the interest rates of a football club right now. But at the end of the day, the Glazer family are the Glazer family. They run the football club, as I alluded to last time, they run the football club like it's in '99. And that's the problem. They're living in the past. And they don't live in the present and in the future. That's the problem with the Glazer family. But maybe they will. If, as I say, they get the big money that comes in, they might live in the future. Or we can buy that brilliant yacht. Joel, Avram, we've always wanted to go travelling. We always wanted to go around the world. Oh, but we can't because of protection issues in case Manchester United fans are there. Oh, we can do that now. We've distanced himself from that football club. Suddenly, like I say, all this pressure, and let's be honest, the Glazer family are only human, as much as everybody else is. I don't honestly believe that they can sleep at night when they have this much hate against their names and their family. Like, I don't honestly believe that they can sleep at night thinking that their life is secure, their safety, they're protected. Because if they lived in the UK, their houses would have been stormed, protested outside of, so forth. But because they live in the safety and comfort of, the US and Tampa Bay, like, really, it does give the it does give the rule in precedent around that. But in terms of them being forced to sell, I can't think of anything that can force them to sell. I mean, the only thing that maybe you could have suggested would have been Man United go into maybe financial trouble and it forces them to sell that way because they can get some money while Man United's a distressed asset. But they don't necessarily need to sell now because they've got the Champions League football, which covers them for another year. As I, insisted and I went through last time.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate it. Next question, and I'm sure Sheikh Garian will like that. Eventually got this question. In the 92 Holdings document where it was registered and approved, on the director's name, aside from Sheikh Jassim, was another name called Abdul Rahman Al Nasri. Would he have a role to play?
Well, Abdul Rahman Al Nasri, from what I can gather from the research that my colleagues had done on himself, and we made a few phone calls within some contacts that we'd made during the Qatar World Cup. From what we can understand, he's a Qatari national and he's studied law and I can't remember. I think it was law and logistics. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on it. I think he studied at Leeds University, quite some time ago. And he'd done the qualification. He's more of a lawyer and he has that kind of a background in logistics. And from buying a multi-billion-pound company, having a lawyer on your board of directors, I think really it's a smart move. It's something that I think a lot of businessmen, and especially in Sheikh Jassim's case, you're buying something that's worth billions. You're going to want to have somebody who knows the legal side of how a football club works, how potentially he might be the guy that knows that the rules and the laws around the contracts regarding how to pass it through the Premier League, how to distance the links from PSG if there even is any. Like, this would be the guy really that you'd go to in terms of the logistics and the law side of the deal, really. And I know that Sheikh Jassim had hired the law firm McFarland's to run the legal side and the logistics of the bidding process. And, whether they decide, Sheikh Jassim decides if he was to be successful, he'd keep them on a contractual basis to run the contracts around Manchester United. I really don't know. But aside from him as a person, the role that he would have, if he was to have any, if I had to predict, because I don't know for a fact, I think he would have a role potentially within the 9-2 Foundation, but I don't think he would have a day-to-day role of in and around Manchester United.
Sorry. Jeez, my goodness, man. Thanks for that. Really appreciate. Hope that answers your question, Sheikh. How I should be quick. How reliable are the routers? I mean, I think we've addressed this, but I would say that they're fairly reliable. Correct? They're not gonna. It's not clickbait like on Twitter.
No.
I think that's.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. I mean, with the report that they put out, like people use the word double down. They triple downed on the report. They literally the same report out 3 times. Every single 2 hours, 3 times. The scrutiny come from the British media. Put it out again. The scrutiny came from reported insiders. They put it out again. They weren't backing down. That's the one thing that I if you like, respect around a company like Reuters. Reuters, for me, I would put them on par with a Bloomberg. Really. I think Bloomberg's above them in terms of maybe reliability and in terms of the sort of business world, but they're a close second, if I'm being completely honest. Really close second. If I had to maybe balance it out, it's almost like you have, I don't know, you have Sky Sports, and you have BT. That's the sort of comparison that I'm building between the two companies, Reuters and Bloomberg. That's the sort of comparison.
And then lastly, which is obviously what Lob is saying, Tom, is there a rain announcement? Jeez, my cough. Sorry, guys. Apologies. So I'm speaking less. Tom, is there a rain announcement coming in the next few hours? Sorry, it's pretty much duplicated. I suspect the answer to that question is no. There seems to be something going around Twitter, which is saying that this rain thing is incoming. But again, is that just? I assume that's just fluff, right?
Of course, yeah. It's like I said. There's no set, announcement deadlines, and there's not even a decision yet. So, if there's no decision, how can you set an announcement? Honestly, it's just the publication of rumors, and as I say, like I don't know, the people that are putting these stories out and that get picked up and blown up on social media. I don't know. There might be an executive at Rain that, there might be one of the heads of Rain that's leaking it out or whatever. Every company and every business has leaks. Let's be honest. Every company has somebody who has a journalist in their pocket or whatever who bundles them, a brown envelope and tell me what you know. Like it does happen. I'm not going to deny saying that in terms of big companies, but I in terms of announcements and things like I say, if no decision's been made, you can't announce something that you don't have a decision for. So that's the best way that I can answer Jamie's question there.
And thanks for that again, Tom. And like I said, guys, like this is the thing. Like this is why we bring. And I'll obviously come to on questions. This is why why I feel like this stuff like these shows are quite useful, and why I go to Tom. A lot of the time is because, quite frankly, like if I were you, I would mute your Twitter notifications on Twitter, with the exception of Tom, Fabrizio, and Ornstein, because there's so much speculation. Obviously, look at when you're hearing stuff from Reuters and stuff like that. That's different. I get it. But when you're just seeing some United fan channel or something that just says takeover deal close or it's a gym or something like that, guys, I would take it with a pinch of salt, to be honest. Like that it's going to be announced in the next few hours. A lot of people just using Twitter to farm engagement in that respect, and don't really go into the nuance of what they're saying, which is why these shows are obviously hour and a half exactly long, because they're taking time to actually go into the nuance of what's actually happening with takeover, not just farming out provocative clickbait statements for people to engage in. So just bear that in mind, guys. A lot of the stuff that's on Twitter and some on YouTube is just clickbait stuff, which is why their videos are 5 minutes, maybe maximum 10 minutes, as opposed to an hour, where they actually go into the nuance. And I want to thank Tom again for actually going into the nuance and educating everyone in the chat as well. I'm going to quickly just check if any questions. Then I've obviously just got a few more questions, Tom, and then we'll wrap up, because I know you're busy. Let's see, I think about transfers. Let's have a quick look. Let's have a quick look. Just a lot of anti-Glazer out. So he said so. Okay, so Steve said he's tweeted this. So let me have a look at my Twitter to see if this is about the look. I'm looking at my Twitter. You DM'd it to me? Unless Tom, do you have anything on your Twitter?
I'll just double check.
Yeah, I don't see any. You said article.
He's not in your requests, Cyril, is he? G message requests.
No, it says article tweet you and you reply to your tweet Eric Ten Hag effect. I don't remember tweeting about Eric Ten Hag. Let me have a look. My DM should be open, so you could DM to me, but
no, I've got nothing.
Yeah, I've got nothing either. So either you've got the wrong Twitter handle, Steve, because I don't have anything here. So I mean, it's at We Are United X is my Twitter handle. So either respond to one of my latest tweets, or obviously direct message me, and my messaging should be open. So I'll have a look, but I don't have anything. It's basically answer your question. But yeah, if anyone has it, then that's fine. Let's have a look. Do we know? Sorry. It's just 1 second. Yeah. Charles, shout out to bed. RDS and Tom, no clickbait, just honest opinions. Hit the like, people. It's free. Qatar only. Yes, exactly. Just honest opinions. Not here to clickbait anybody. We just want to explain the nuance. For those who what looks like 100 people watching. So let's get 100 likes, guys. If there's 100 people watching plus, I want 100 likes on this video, guys. Okay, this is really good content. Thanks mostly in part to Tom, to be honest. So please hit that like button. Make sure you follow him on Twitter as well. Yeah, I'm looking for the article as well. So yeah, just send it if you're still in the chat, Steve. RSV shouts him, says, hopefully Fletcher Arnold immediately sacked once you get the Qataris. I suspect that they're not going to be immediately sacked. I suspect that there's going to be a delay in that sort of process.
Mm.
I would suspect that. So just final questions, officer myself. I know you have to off because you're busy. So thanks again for coming on. I think well, actually, we'll take a bit of a break from the Takeover news to just quickly divert to transfers. Now, before you actually sent me this message, sorry, you sent me regarding Mason Mount, and the bid regarding that. Can you just give us a bit of information about United's dealings with Mason Mount, and do they have any other transfers that they're trying to lock down at this moment in time?
Well, at this moment in time, the only deal that's like there's been negotiations with, the player, an agent, and a football, and they've actually gone directly to a club to negotiate the deal, has been for Mason Mount with Chelsea. They had the first bid, which was £40 million straight up. That's it, no add-ons, and it was knocked straight out of the hand and got kicked off the table. Chelsea had always gone by the stance they wanted 70 million plus 10 million in add-ons, which would accumulate 80 million. But then today, Manchester United had put in a second offer, and they'd proposed 45 million in an initial payment and 5 million in add-ons, and they'd gone to 50. Chelsea had rejected the offer, but Chelsea have lowered their evaluation, and they're happy to settle for a package that either starts at 60 and goes to, say, 65, or just gives them that figure straight away. They've come down from a total package that they wanted of 80, and the reasonability is to come down to around 60, 65. But even in that case, Manchester United had always stood by the fact of, we don't want to pay over £55 million for a player with 1 year left in his contract. That was the stance that Man United have always taken. And Chelsea had always taken the stance of, we're not going to go down in price, but they have. And you could say, well, they've shipped 4 players off to Saudi, they've sold Kai Havertz pretty much to Arsenal for 65 million. And, you can say all these different things. It's been a fire sale today for Chelsea, really. And the one thing that I know for a fact, just as we've been live anyway, about 45 minutes ago that I got, was around Mason Mount has agreed personal terms with Manchester United, and the personal terms wouldn't be a problem to go forward. And he's already instigated to Chelsea that he wants to move to Manchester United, and Chelsea are trying to do the best thing by him as being one of their academy players. And he's an academy player that had an influential role in the club winning the Champions League at that time. He put the ball through for Kai Havertz to stick it in the back of the net, and those two players look destined to leave the football club. So they did the best by Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz wanted to go to Arsenal, and they did a deal with Arsenal. Mason Mount wants to go to Manchester United. I think they'll compromise and they'll do a deal. But the only thing is, will Manchester United compromise? And if I'm being completely honest, if Chelsea have come down from a total package of 80 to potentially settling for 60, so they've dropped the valuation of over 20 million. Like, by doing something like that, I think you can get them down to 50. I think if you put maybe 50 as a straight up payment rather than having add-ons, maybe push it to 55 and then say, look, we're not going to go any more than that. I don't think Chelsea are going to turn that down for a player that A, doesn't want to be there, and B, they want to do the best wishes by the player. So if you want to do the best wishes by the player and somebody who doesn't want to be at your club because they're not going to sign a new contract, then you sell them for 55 million and you just accept the money that you're being offered. And then around the personal terms regarding Mason Mount, well, the personal terms, as far as I'm aware, isn't a problem. And the personal terms are agreed upon a set contract, and wages and things like that we can get into when a fee's actually agreed, because that's when Manchester United will negotiate the terms of an agreement and a contract with Mason Mount. But the personal terms aren't set to be a problem. So whatever he was demanding at Chelsea, he's prepared to compromise what he was demanding to stay at Chelsea just so that he can move to Manchester United. So if, for example, I'm not a Chelsea, expert and how they, the wage structure works within Chelsea, but be surprised if he wasn't on more than 100 grand a week, 150 maybe, before he wants to renegotiate terms. And I think he would have maybe wanted to have maybe 250. He looks at some of the other players that are there, maybe like a Koulibaly and stuff, when they were still Chelsea players, and Havertz. Like, these players were earning over £200,000 a week. You know, I look at that and I think Mason Mount, I think, will want maybe 200k a week, something like that, which, with how Richard Arnold said that he wanted to set up the wage structure, he didn't really want too many players, barring if they're a superstar player, being over 200k. That was the sort of mantra that Richard Arnold gave in a statement where he wants to introduce a wage cap. Well, you're not going to do that when you sign Marcus Rashford on this new deal. So maybe there is an exception for some. But so long as it doesn't kick up a fuss between certain players, then, you know, what's the argument and what's the problem, really? And I think Mason Mount would come to Manchester United, and I think he would hit the ground running. I'm not going to deny and saying that. I don't think he would, you know, take a lot of time to adapt, to acclimatise. I think Erik ten Hag's system suits him well.
So, Tom, I was going to even ask you, like, what are your thoughts on the Mason personally? Because, I mean, RSV has the comment here that says, ball retention will be very diabolical to watch with Mount plus Bruno plus Casemiro as a midfield trio next season. Not a single one of his person. I mean, I agree. I look at that, a midfield like that, and I see that as being incredibly unbalanced as a midfield. And I think that we could it'd be one of those where I'm not saying Mount is like McTominay, but
yeah,
in one sense he is, in that like he can't retain the ball and he's press resistant. Mount works a lot better you know, in the number 8 position. So you can replace Bruno with Mount, I guess, but to play Mount and Bruno and Casemiro together, I think is almost like suicide. But I don't know what you think.
I don't. If I'm being completely honest, there's been the comparison with Pep that with Ten Hag, that he would want to build the team to play similar to how Pep wants to play. If I'm being honest, with the sort of signings that he's made, I don't get that kind of feeling that he wants to play total football and, you know, have 70% possession. And I don't really think he's bothered about that, really. I think Ten Hag wants to play similar to how Jurgen Klopp plays. And the reason why I say that is some of the players that he's bought, I could have seen Jurgen Klopp buying at Liverpool. Like, for example, when Liverpool needed a left back, they bought in Kostas Tsimikas. Tsimikas and Malacia, for example, a similar profile of players. Brilliant in the final third. Defensively, there's question marks. You can say the same for other players. You bring in, you know, a ball carrying or, you know, dominant defender who's aggressive, gets tight to people, you know, on different physical scales, obviously, Virgil van Dijk and Lisandro Martinez. But there is the similar characteristic there. Erik ten Hag, I think, with Mason Mount, if Mason Mount went to Liverpool, I think you can see why. Energy, enthusiasm in the midfield, can play and thread the balls through. But I also look at Manchester United in the final third, because we've lacked a goal scorer and a number 9 this season, and you haven't had that number 9 be in the box for the entirety. And I think primarily down to the fact of that, I don't think you're going to see a lot of Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes are going to be the main contributors to assists this going into the season. I don't think that's how Ten Hag wants to play. I think he wants to play Casemiro as the 6, Bruno and Mount as individual 8s. And I think if you go down that sort of channel, if Anthony, you know, improves in terms of his assist ratio to goals, same thing with Rashford, maybe plays more as a team player than an out-and-out goal scorer coming out from wide, you can have late runs into the box from Bruno Fernandes, from Mason Mount. That's really what Mason Mount is about. He's a box-to-box midfielder. That's how I see him anyway. He's a number 8 for me, but the physicalities of playing number 8, he doesn't suit, no. But I just think it's a younger upgrade on say, Eriksen, really. Eriksen of 4 years ago, 5 years ago, would have been perfect for how Erik ten Hag wants to play. Decent on the ball. He had a lot better legs back then. Obviously, the incident didn't happen, and you don't know about a defibrillator and how that affects his game and playing.
Of course, yeah.
But, Mason Mount, I think, brings you the energy, and, you can say it for what it is. He's a winner. He's won at the high. He's won the Champions League. He's won something big in his career already, and he's only 24. So at 24, he's already done what some of these players haven't done at 28, upwards of 29, like Martial's, Rashford's. They've not won the Champions League. Like, he has big game experience, and in that big game, I mean, he performed, did he not? He passed the ball through for, the line splitting pass through for Kai Havertz that scored the goal to win Chelsea the Champions League. So there is the experience there. For me, he's not the profile that I would personally go for. But if Erik ten Hag's going to build this team to be on energy and pressing, I understand why he would go for that. And signing a player like Mason Mount insinuates to me he wants to build Manchester United to play how Jurgen Klopp plays, on the front foot, halfway line football. But it's not so much about possession. It's about what you do with the ball when you have it. And you play 5-6 intricate passes, you get into the opposition box. You play it out wide, you take the play to the byline and bob it in the box.
Sorry to interrupt you, Tom. Just because I've got a few questions that are coming in, and I appreciate that you're going to be running late as well.
I've got time, G. I've got time.
Oh, you got time. Okay, cool. So See the World says RDS Mount can take free kicks as well, more energy and can break lines. Solo actually says the Rice story about us offering a player plus cash, is that an option, or are we just being used to make Arsenal pay? Was the kind of the follow up. What do you think about that, Tom?
I think both. I think what Solo's saying, I think both are correct, because from what I know, West Ham, like, how do you get more money out of a football club? You link one of the biggest clubs in that league or in Europe with the player. Whether it's true or not, like, it's an imbalancement. Yeah. As far as I know, Manchester United have always had an interest in Declan Rice from 3 years ago. They've always been interested in the player. But the evaluation that West Ham have always set, Man United have never looked at going to those lengths to get him for 100 million, because they looked at other priorities in those positions. And really, I think you could say, like, they bought Casemiro for 70, and Casemiro's got, a lot more years on the clock than Rice, but he's also got a lot more experience than Declan Rice. The thing with Declan Rice, I think, is with Man United pursuing Mason Mount, and that's the way that they're going down, I don't think they're going to want to fork out upwards of £100 million on Declan Rice if they were wanting to go for him. So the option of putting a player in there plus cash, I do think it spices things up, because really, how can I say, it's a better deal for West Ham depending on what player they get in return. For example, there's two players that I know for definite West Ham have been interested in for 12 months. Scott McTominay, which would be not a like-for-like replacement of Declan Rice, but it'd be a similar player to fit the mould and fit the role. And Harry Maguire. David Moyes has always rated Harry Maguire for 2-3 years when he's been at Manchester United. And he's been on a bit of a rocky patch and a rocky road, but he's always had that invested interest in him. And I think if Man United wanted to, if you stuck in McTominay, Maguire, a player that David Moyes would want, plus cash, I think leaning more towards maybe McTominay, because it's a similar position to what Declan Rice would play. Like, if it's a player that David Moyes is willing to accept it, and I think he would accept, Scott McTominay within the deal, I think McTominay maybe plus a 50, maybe 55, 60 in, a transfer fee, and plus McTominay is a player, and if McTominay is willing to go, which I think he wants to get, first team football and proper game time, then, if everything checks out in terms of Declan Rice would want to come, from which what I've known for years is he's open to all Premier League moves. But the one thing that I think is more of a harm to Arsenal isn't Manchester United, because if I had to predict, I don't think United will get Declan Rice. But I think the biggest sticking point for Arsenal is Manchester City. And the reason why I say that is yes, they've bought Kovacic, but they've just got rid of their captain in Ilkay Gundogan.
Yeah,
And they have a player that is like for Declan Rice in
yeah,
Calvin Phillips that they
true,
could offer. And I think
true,
Calvin Phillips or McTominay, I think they'd rather go for Calvin Phillips, me personally, with the way
true,
that David Moyes would want to play.
true.
And I just look at that and I think even if they didn't offer Calvin Phillips, I still think City could, blow them out of the water, and they
Mm.
would pay £100 million for Declan Rice. They've already
And also,
proved they'll pay. They paid
and
100
also,
million for Jack Grealish, for
and
Christ's
also
sake.
the
So
player as well. The player, obviously, if you're thinking, I know, obviously, sorry, I get the cough.
mm,
Any obviously, United, Arsenal, those are obviously upgrades as well.
yeah,
But we're seeing obviously now a lot of English players and players in general. You want to win trophies as a lot of
yep,
players want, and if City say, I want to go, you
hmm
go. That's lit. There are not that many
yeah,
players that are rejecting Manchester City. I'm sure Harry Kane, wanted to go to Manchester City, but for
hmm
200. And goodness knows what would have happened Manchester City if Harry Kane had gone there versus what happened with what's his name, Haaland. But yeah,
hmm
I mean, you're right. I don't disagree with you. You're right. I just I you know City right now, at least until United get the Qataris. Obviously, if they get the Qataris, have the leverage.
hmm
I think that's fair. Um, Let me see. Is there any other questions in the chat as well? What to say? RDS namesake Mason Green 100 fair next season. Well, I don't really like to talk about the Greenwood, but let's just say I'll end this. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more of a conversation about him next season, given where transfer window is going right now. That's what I would say.
mm,
We cannot have Ericsson running the transfer recruitment when Ericsson was at Ajax. He signed Utrecht players, his previous club, and they're all flops but Harla, and were signed on his own with no help. That's an interesting. I mean, I'll be quite frank, to be honest. I mean, with a lot of people saying, this is my personal opinion. I was going to save this for the season review, and I'll still mention the season review. But this idea that Eric Ten Hag is like so far anyway, we don't know. Obviously, but
mm,
from what he's from what he's been given, when I look at let's just look at the season, like when the players he signed, he Malacia, okay, average. Lisandro, okay, shout out. I'll give him that World Cup winner. I'll give him that. I wouldn't say he's world class right now, but he's going there. So those are the players. Although having said that, to be fair, his first choice was Julian Timber. So
yeah,
again, bear that in mind. Okay, Malacia was his first. But so if we signed Julian Timber, we wouldn't have got Lisandro Martinez. So bear that in mind.
yeah,
Anthony, he did want to sign Anthony, and Anthony's not been that great so far. Like I'd argue he's certainly had a better season than Sancho, but he's not blown for the amount we paid, which I'd argue is more United's fault.
mm,
And then you look at Casemiro again. I don't think Casemiro was Ten Hag's first choice. Frankie De Jong was Casemiro's
yeah.
first choice. So, am I missing anyone else out that we saw? I think it's those four. And then obviously, if you
Ericsson on a free, yeah,
Ericsson on the free, okay, whatever Ericsson, fair enough. It was free. I can't really hate with comment on that. And obviously the loanies in Sabitzer and Weghorst, but I'll get to the club. So I would argue so far, really, if aside from obviously Lisandro and Casemiro have been great, but if you want to keep it a stack, they weren't his first choices. If he got his first choices, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe you never know. Maybe Frankie De Jong and Justin Timber would have bored. You don't know. But at the same time, with the definitive signings that we do know that was first choice in Anthony and in Malacia, they've really not been that great. So I kind of do have a thing where, so I see a lot of stuff on Twitter which says, back the manager, support the manager. If he wants this player, then get it. It's fine. and now United with Mason Mount for potentially 60 million. And I'm thinking, is that really the best use of Manchester United's money for 60 million player in Mason Mount when you're seeing what other teams are doing with their midfield? With Newcastle being linked with Tonali, with Chelsea signing Caicedo. I know they're slightly different type of players. With obviously City signing Kovacic and possibly an Arsenal signing Declan Rice, possibly, etc. I'm seeing all these players, and United Mounts. I mean, I don't know. But again, it could also be financial. I don't know, but I don't know what you think. I mean, what do you think?
No, I'd probably go as far to agree with you, but when you think about it, and there's one story that I'll tell you now anyway. Jurgen Klopp was at Liverpool, and all summer his primary target that he wanted was Julian Brandt. When Julian Brandt was at Bayer Leverkusen, Julian Brandt had two options. He either wanted to go to Liverpool or he wanted to go to Borussia Dortmund. And he ended up going to Borussia Dortmund. Jurgen Klopp was persistent. I want this player. He suits me perfectly. He's everything that I need for my play style and for my project. In steps Michael Edwards. There's this young, talented, potential player, and the logistics and the optics that we use in terms of analytics to find the best profile of players to suit your style of football has put this name on our table. And the name was Mohamed Salah. And the logistics of the deal, when Jurgen Klopp had looked over it and Michael Edwards had persisted with him, Jurgen, take another look. Look at this player, watch him live, look at the clips, we'll get you a video set, whatever. Watch this player and tell me that he doesn't suit you more and better than Julian Brandt would. And Jurgen Klopp flip-flopped and he changed his mind. And Mohamed Salah signed for Liverpool, and, ever since he's signed, the rest is history, let's be honest. I think he's been probably Liverpool's greatest player, barring maybe Virgil van Dijk since the signings, really, in the modern era anyway. So I look at something like that and I think, I don't see John Murtough going to Erik ten Hag's office and desk and say, well, instead of signing Mason Mount, who's a player that you really, really want, let's sign this kid from South America that you've never heard of. I just don't think John Murtough's that kind of guy. I don't think he's the sort of person that would intrude in terms of what a manager wants, because last summer, he did try and get the players that Erik ten Hag wanted specifically. He pissed about all summer trying to get Frankie de Jong, all for the player to down tools on the whole deal and say that, I want to stay in Barcelona. So the player messed you about for 3 months. You did a deal with Barcelona where you agreed the fee for no reason. Literally no reason. As you alluded to before, he wanted Jurrien Timber. Jurrien Timber was prepared to come to Manchester United, but Louis van Gaal got in his ear and said, if you go to Manchester United and you don't get picked, and you're not playing week in, week out, I'm not taking you to the World Cup in Qatar. And
that annoyed me.
Ended up didn't come into Manchester United based upon that. So he thought, right, I'll go for Lisandro Martinez instead then. They got him Lisandro Martinez. But the club had put pressure on Erik ten Hag at the time. Pau Torres. Pau Torres was the main name that Man United were looking at buying before they appointed Erik ten Hag. With or without Erik ten Hag as the manager, that is who I believe anyway they would have signed if it wouldn't have been Erik ten Hag as the manager. I think they would have gone out there and done a deal with Villarreal for Pau Torres. But ultimately and overall, I look at all of that and I think Erik ten Hag's, name to fame isn't from signing players. When he was at Ajax, he had the players brought to him. And what I mean by that is, Sebastian Haller wasn't a player that he would have wanted as a number 9, but Mark Overmars, who was director of football at the time and CEO at the time, Edwin van der Sar, they looked at the markets, they'd looked at the leagues, and they said, this player suits, the Johan Cruyff model of way to play football and the Ajax model of the Johan Cruyff way to play. And Sebastian Haller did, let's be honest, he didn't do much when he was at West Ham. He was a failure. He was a flop, and for the money that they paid for him, went and moved to Ajax, and Erik ten Hag transformed the player. He was one of Europe's best goal scorers, and he rightly he deserved a move to go to Borussia Dortmund. And unfortunately, there, from what I know anyway, around he'd been diagnosed with cancer and certain things around that. So respects good to him and his family, but I just look at that with Erik ten Hag and I think, when he was at Ajax, he didn't have the control over the transfers. And I don't always think that managers should have an influence, because I, bracket Jurgen Klopp, I bracket Pep. They're coaches. They're not managers. Their best attributes is on the training ground, not spotting players. Sir Alex Ferguson was a manager because he could coach, but he could also find the best players in the world. That's the way that I look at it anyway. And I think Erik ten Hag, really, if he's got as much influence as is being reported and coming out of Manchester United that he does over the transfers, then I am concerned, because it's something that he's never done before. And by doing it now, I just don't really see why. There's no reason to do it. Like, if John Murtough's this brilliant sporting director, I'm sure he'd find you a player that would suit your, preference for a goalkeeper. Play out from the back, yada, yada, so forth. I'm sure exactly the same thing would, conversation would be happening in terms of the number 9 you like. And the club and him were in agreement. Harry Kane's the perfect option, if you can get him. So I look at it from the perspective, they agree on some things, but I just think that if Erik ten Hag's the leading force behind every single player that they sign, and I think we'll be able to understand that a lot better in terms of the more transfers that Manchester United try to make or end up making, because Mason Mount, I think, is a strange one for a lot of fans when, there's players like Caicedo, Rice who are on the market. But I think if it depends upon what Man United go for, like a Højlund, for example, we know isn't Erik ten Hag's player because he wants Harry Kane.
Of course it is, yeah.
It is a player that's really being forced onto him, but it suits the style of football. That's the thing that I think the club would push towards him. He suits the style of football and he's available for an attainable price with Atalanta. In the same way, maybe with a goalkeeper,
Onana?
If I'm being completely honest, I think Erik ten Hag, out of any goalkeeper in the world, I think he'd want Onana because he's worked with the player before and he's one of the best goalkeepers at playing out from the back. So the relationship's already been built, and it's been burnt once. People can patch things over and they make up and kiss and make up. Like, it happens. So I think there is a stance and position in there, especially if David De Gea leaves. But the club could flip a U-way on him and say, well, we believe Diogo Costa's better. He's younger. He's got more room for development. He's brilliant at kicking, shot stopping, and he's got a release clause. Onana doesn't have that. So there's pros and cons, I guess, for any position. But I think the longer the window goes on, we'll see really who's been in control of the transfers. Because if it's players that Erik ten Hag's worked with before, and this is the last point that I'm going to make, any transfer that Erik ten Hag has made since being at Manchester United, he's worked with before or he knows them. Malacia, he was a player that he knew from Feyenoord when he was at Ajax because he was a player that was on Ajax's list. You had a situation where he'd worked with Lisandro Martinez before. He'd worked with Anthony before, so he knows those players.
Eriksen as well. Yeah.
Eriksen, when he was recovering and rehabilitating from the Euros, incident, he was training with the Ajax first team. Albeit he didn't play for Ajax, he was building up, his career from there. So Erik ten Hag knew the player.
The only one was Casemiro, and you could argue
Casemiro really is the only one that. Yeah, Casemiro, he's never worked with before, and he didn't know. Casemiro probably didn't know who Erik ten Hag was, and vice versa. They'd never worked with each other. But ultimately and overall, I just think he's never been given a player that he's unsure about, or he's never worked with before, and it's a player that's for the future. Because Casemiro is a short-term option. Let's be honest. If he was to go for, like I say, a player like a Caicedo, he's never worked with him before, and he doesn't know the player on a personal level. then we'll see Erik ten Hag as a coach. And that's why I believe his best traits and attributes is as a coach. And for me, if I had the reins to the keys of it, I would say, Erik ten Hag, stick to what you're good at, which is developing and coaching players. And we as the football structure, albeit it's appalling in John Murtough and Richard Arnold at the current time, if a new owner comes in and they bring in a proper football structure, Man United will sign some of the best young players in the world. It will happen. These gems that, go to Brighton will come to Man United. And really, Man United had that chance to have somebody who could have done that for them. They literally had Ralph Ragnick in the building for 4 or 5 months, and they sacked him off, and they laid him off because of what happened with the dismay and the comments that he made. But if maybe they stuck with him, he might have been a brilliant asset right now. You need to buy cheap players. You need to negotiate deals. Ralph Ragnick's one of the best in the game for that, really.
Absolutely, Tom. So just rounding things up, so I had to come on for a while. Actually, how many players are we actually looking to sell in the window in the best case scenario for us as Solo? And then there was just one other one I think I just missed. Did I miss it? Let me just have a look, just so I can ask them both at the same time. It was another comment. Chelsea paid 80 million plus for Modric, 100 for Enzo, and Anthony scored more than both of them put together, but Anthony always gets criticized. And I see what you're saying, Evan Carpi, although to be fair, Enzo is not a he's not a winger, he's a midfielder. Modric, I get, it's been a flop.
Yeah, but you look at it from this, Chelsea fans will throw, well, Anthony had a full season. Yeah. Those two didn't. I guess that's the point to come there. But to the question around, player sales, I mean, like where do I start? Like, Erik ten Hag's got a short list of players that he wants to move on and get off the wage bill and also, just either get out on loan or whatever. And I know like the Zidane Iqbal thing, came as a shock for a lot of people. Like, he went for around £800,000, which is barely even a 2-bedroom flat in London. That's basically what Zidane Iqbal went for, really, to FC Utrecht in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only thing I'm looking at with regards to outgoings, there is a list. Like, if an offer comes in of 30, 40 million, Scott McTominay's gone. That's the stance of Man United. Same thing for Harry Maguire. Similar sort of price. Somebody's willing to go to that, or they're prepared to do 25 with add-ons, something like that. They'll take it because they want these players off of the wage bill. McTominay and Maguire are 2 ones where it's a case of if they don't sign a player in that position, they'll keep them. But if they get a brilliant offer in which is refusal and they can't really turn down, then they'll end up selling the players. And like there is the fringe and the odd players. Like, look, Alex Telles is another one who's on the market and available for transfer. You have Anthony Martial. Is another one where if a club comes in for him, then Manchester United are looking to get them offloaded and going. I know this might come maybe as a bit. Jadon Sancho has a lot of interest from Tottenham.
Time.
There is an interest from Tottenham, and if Tottenham followed up on that interest, like, you're not going to get the full 70 back for him, and I'd be shocked if you got anywhere near that, to be honest with you. But like, if Tottenham put 50, maybe 60, I think Manchester United would definitely look at it if Erik ten Hag didn't see how he fit into the plans or anything. But no, like I said, that there is, quite a few players that Manchester United want to get rid of. Eric Bailly, for example, has been quoted for going for potentially £2 million and stuff like that. And I just think Man United are going to, I'm going to say, the structure are going to be found out for the inconsistency, the failures over the last coming windows as to where the money that you've paid for a lot of these players that you're trying to get rid of, you're not going to get anywhere near back for. I'd be surprised if you make a profit on any of them, if I'm being really honest. Donny van de Beek, you're not going to make a profit on him if he goes somewhere. Tony Martial, you ain't getting near 50 million for him. Maguire, Jesus Christ, like, you bought him for 80 million. That 80 million pounds built Leicester a new training facility.
Yeah.
Like Scott McTominay, he's a young player, so you're going to get the full profits from that. Same thing with Zidane Iqbal. The £800,000 that you've made, you get it straight away. Like there's no reductions or losses. But the only problem that I think around the selling side of it is Man United don't really have anything that they can really sell. There's no marketing around it, and maybe that's why you look at it from maybe the Saudi league. There's not a lot of Saudi Arabian clubs that are interested in Man United players. Yeah, there's only one that. I know.
Sorry to interrupt you, Tom. And that's just one round up. But do you not find it a bit suspicious that we know that the Saudi investment fund have one of the biggest stocks or investments in Chelsea, and the fact that it could just be a coincidence. I agree, because obviously Saudi Arabia, they obviously got Ronaldo in, they got Benzema in, got Ruben Neves in, so it's not just Chelsea. But I just do find it weird that you've got essentially almost four, Koulibaly, Hakim Ziyech. I think they're trying to get Callum Hudson-Odoi to go. Obviously, Kante, so that's free, and then potentially Callum Hudson-Odoi and others. Is there something to be said about Chelsea in the Saudi link kind of circumventing, essentially Chelsea basically selling players to Saudi so they can kind of circumvent the FFP to be able to spend more, because they're gonna the sales that they made. You've seen them sell almost 3 players to Saudi. They've obviously sold
4 really.
Kovacic for, was it 50 million? Was it less than that?
Kovacic 30 to Man City, 25 plus add-ons.
And then obviously they sold Kai Havertz for 60. So they already made, almost in excess of 100 mil in player sales already, compared to what Manchester United have done, which is negative for quite some time. So, no doubt that they'll be able to spend. So, is there any truth to that with how Chelsea are doing their business?
The common denominator is PAF, Public Investment from Saudi Arabia, pledged £21 billion to the Saudi League. People have called it, an evolvement of China. Like when China, they invested loads into players, into the league, and then after 2-3 years, it all went downhill because they didn't get the TV deals and so forth. Mm-hmm. The thing with the Saudi Arabia thing is, it's so much to the saying of that China never bought a superstar player to their league. They didn't bring a Ronaldo. They didn't bring that profile. They tried for Gareth Bale, but they couldn't bring and attract that player to come. At the time now, they've tried to get every single big retiring superstar. Your Ronaldos, your Messis, your Benzemas, your Modric's, your Sergio Busquets. They've tried to get a lot of the older players, and really that's the market that I thought that they were going down, and it's not. They're targeting any player, really. Free transfers, and if you've won things like Ruben Neves, for example, £47 million, 3-year deal is going to earn him around £100 million. For a player who's that young, and he can go to Saudi Arabia, play for 2-3 years, and he can always come back and still win major trophies, gets his big money, come back and wins major trophies. The Saudi League thing, it's not a new China. Let me be clear in saying that. It's not. This will be here to stay. And it wouldn't surprise me in the long term if they have all these superstar players that go over there and maybe young talents, that Saudi Arabia end up getting, hand in hand with UEFA, and suddenly Champions League games are played there or whatever. It might happen. I'm not going to deny saying that. But regarding Chelsea, PIF have a majority percentage of investment in Clear Lake Capital, which is private. I can't remember if it's private equity or if it's just an investment group based out of California. And Clear Lake as a group, the assets that they own assets in the hundreds of billions. That they're one of the biggest and most wealthiest investment banks within the US, and they manage a lot of assets for the Saudis' PIF, for which they invest money in for them to possess their assets essentially and market them. And essentially, then you have a situation where Saudi money goes to Clear Lake, and then Clear Lake are the majority owners in Chelsea. So then the investment that goes into Chelsea comes from Clear Lake, which might come from PAF. You know, you're putting a lot of dots together, and that is the theory on the street, really. And then obviously you have a situation where today you have, you know, I think it was 3-4 players have gone to Saudi Arabia in one day. Like you had Kante, you've had Mendy, Koulibaly, and Ziyech all go to Saudi Arabian clubs in one day. And some of which they're getting fees for. I think Mendy they got around 12 million for. I think Koulibaly they got 17. And Ziyech was, I think, it's a free. And Kante was a free, obviously, as well. So they are getting money from the players, but they're not getting the sort of money that they paid for the players. So you can look at it from Chelsea and say they've moved a lot of players. Kante was already a free, so they've not made any money there. Mendy, I think they paid 30 million for from Rennes when they bought him, and they've sold him for 12, so they've made an 18 million pound loss. And they've sold Koulibaly for, I think it's 17. I can't remember how much they bought him for. Like, they paid stupid money to get him anyway to come, and he was on 360 grand a week at Chelsea. Like, you know, stupid money, really. And you obviously have Ziyech, which went for free as well. So the players that they've sold, you can look at it from the perspective of, there's a link to Saudi Arabia. Like, it's funny how, you know, they need to dodge the FFP and Saudi Arabia come out of the back pocket and, you know, do this. And I do think really it's a sense of jealousy of where rival fans look at it from, why are they buying just Chelsea's players? Why are they not buying an Eric Bailly? Why are they not buying a Joel Matip maybe at Liverpool? Why are they not buying a Kyle Walker? Why are they not buying an aging player from another club other than Chelsea? And, you know, you can look at it for whatever reasons. And I mean, the one thing that I know around a lot of the players that they've bought, they've targeted Muslim players. And you can look at that for the religious links, the beliefs, you know, Mecca and Riyadh and Jeddah and, you know, places like that within Saudi Arabia. Like, the money along with living in a Muslim country for which your religion, you know, continuates. For example, I think Koulibaly is a Muslim. I think, you know, Mendy's a Muslim. Ziyech, you know, all of them, you know, they believe in Islam. Kante, another one. Like, you know, there is a devoted link there with the players. Benzema's another one, for example. You know, there is a link there around the profile of players that they're going for. It's not just based upon age and it's not based upon the religion. You know, Ronaldo,
of course,
and Neves, but you know, the primary target is you can attract those players because of the religious beliefs that they would have, and also you're bunging them with a bunch of cash.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, with the Chelsea thing, I don't think there is a lot of weight to it, really, because I just think it's a case of Chelsea have a lot of players that can be sold that they're willing to really accept any price for. They'll they'll take a loss on literally anybody, so long as they get rid of them. And the odd few that they can get money for, Mason Mount, for example, to Man United, and you have a situation with Kai Havertz going to Chelsea for to Arsenal from Chelsea for 65 million. Like, they're making big money on some players, but they're also making losses on. They're making a lot more losses on players that they paid big fees for than what they haven't done, really. And like I say, for Mason Mount's a better deal than the Kai Havertz deal because of the fact of he's a youth player. Cobham boy, you know, come for the youth ranks. Whatever transfer fee that they make from that hits straight onto the balance sheet with FFP. So I look at it from Chelsea's perspective, and I think they brought in a lot of players, so obviously they're going to have to get rid of a lot of players. It's going to happen. And I think the way that Todd Bowley's looked at it is, you know, you can say it for what it is. You know, he's found another loophole or whatever you want to allude it. The one thing that Todd Bowley isn't, he's not stupid. And I think when he come in, I think a lot of the consensus around even Chelsea fans was he's just spending a lot of money and he doesn't really know what he's doing with it. And a lot of the players that he's spent money on, he's wasted. Like Koulibaly is a waste of money that he's paid. For what reason? No reason at all. You know, there is some players that they've brought to the club that you question. Mudryk, for example, performance-wise and stuff. But there is a consensus that he's smart. He's a businessman. He knows how to get round certain clauses. Give players, 8-9 year contracts and stretch the transfer fee over that long. Like, he knows what he's doing really around the finance side of football. Recruitment side, he's brought in recruitment operators, Christian Vivell and Winstanley from Brighton. Like, he's brought in proper recruitment team to run the transfers. And really and ultimately, I just look at that and I think that with how Chelsea have run the market, really, they've run the market well. Like, I'd say probably over the last 6 months, probably from January, they've maybe been the best club in the transfer market based upon what they've done. And what I mean by that is the influx of players that they've been able to bring in and the players that they bring out, not the quality of the performance of the players. But I look at Chelsea and I think, like, they've always been a brilliant selling club. So I don't really see what the shock is and the surprise is now that they've sold a load of players to Saudi Arabia, because really they could have sold those players to anywhere. Koulibaly had an offer from Inter Milan that he could have taken. Ziyech still had interest in him from PSG, for which fell through in January. Edouard Mendy, I think a club in France would have probably taken him. Kante, well, I think Kante would have had a lot of suitors in and around Europe. Italy, I think, would have been an option for him. Spain, an Atletico Madrid, somewhere like that would have been an option. He would have had, offers on the table. So these players, the myth that they just go into Saudi Arabia because of the money that Clear Lake gets from PAF and things like that, like, you can look at it from that perspective. But if that's the theory and if that was to be true, I think Newcastle fans would be throwing up in arms. Like, you bought us as a football club, but you're investing however much money to fund one of our rivals in the top 4, or, at the top of the end of the table in Chelsea. But you're supposed to be our majority owner. Like, Newcastle fans, I think, would have a voice to say about that. But, I just look at it from the perspective, I think Todd Bowley's a smart businessman and he knows how to run the finance side of football. And because he doesn't know how to operate the football club from the football side, really you have a situation where it's almost like Ed Woodward at Man United. He knew what he was doing with the finances. And, in terms of Ed Woodward, he made Man United a lot of money. But running the football side of the club, he didn't have a clue. But he didn't employ somebody to run the football side and him just run the financials and the commercial side of the club. Todd Bowley does that for Chelsea. Financials, commercial side, I'll run that. Not a problem at all. Along with Bedard Egbali. All right, we need proper directors of football. Brighton's a brilliant recruitment club. Let's get them. Red Bull bring through brilliant players. Go and get one of their sporting directors, Christian Vivell. They went and got Vivell and Winstanley, and they run the recruitment project now. And suddenly, when you were getting quoted for like 150 million euros for Victor Osimhen, you're now buying Nicholas Jackson from Villarreal for 30 million euros. And really, like, I just look at those sort of policies and structures, and I think Man United could never. That's the one thing that I'm just saying.
That's fair. Let's round this up with a final question. And obviously, as we ask pretty much at the end of every stream at this point, and Gene happens to produce in the show, is when we will get announced on Takeover. When do you think it will be close, Tom? What is your indication? Do you have any indication of when exactly we're going to get something official, or are the Glazers just going to drag on this process even until the beginning of next season?
Well, I'll give you, what, in the next minute or so, there's not going to be an announcement. Let's put it that way. No, I've been, if I'm being serious, like, as I said, there isn't any deadlines, there isn't anything set in stone. So, in terms of an announcement and stuff, like, when the Glazer family have made their mind up, I'll come on here and I'm sure we'll do a show and we'll report on what the Glazer family have decided. And then from there, you might have an announcement date. You might have a leaked, official document. You might have something to hold on to, really. Like, a lot of Man United fans are holding on to the like, it's got that bad around, like, finding out what's actually going on. Like, people are delving on company houses to find out what the 9-2 Foundation is. Like, I'd never thought I'd see the day, really. But it happens at the end of the day with how the Glazer family have treated the club for 18 years. So a delay, and the Glazer family never work on a timeline. That's the one thing that I've always, stood by over the years is these people, they don't work on timelines. They work on like train lines, really. Like 1 minute you think they'll go when it's something that suits them financially, they'll go 100 mile an hour, and they'll go and do it. Like when they knew that Man United, they could buy it for a leveraged takeover and they could make millions out of it, and suddenly it's grown this big that they can get billions. Notice how fast they accelerated to buy Man United Football Club at the time. But now when it comes to potentially selling it, when somebody doesn't want to give you stupid money straight away, it doesn't surprise me that it drags on for as long as it has. So in terms of an announcement, nothing is imminent. There isn't any set dates in stone. And look, if it came out tomorrow, I'm not going to sit on here and be a hypocrite and say, oh, I knew it was going to be tomorrow. I just couldn't be asked to tell you or anything like that. No, because honestly, I don't know. And any journalist out there that says that they know a date, you've had it many a times where journalists have come out and said, it's going to be this Friday. It's going to be end of next week. It's going to be Wednesday. It's going to be Tuesday. It's going to be Halloween. Maybe it might be Christmas Day, knowing the look of how long this is going on. That might be everybody's Christmas present. But, there is, like I said, there isn't any set dates in stone and nothing is imminent.
Fair. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, everyone, for watching. And as it says, I think Tempting says, let tomorrow be a joyful day. I'm sure a lot of us would love it if a full sale to Qatar was announced tomorrow. But let's still try and be objective. Let's see what tomorrow holds. But yeah, anyway, guys, thank you so much for all those who tuned into the show. Really, really appreciate it. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio if you haven't already. Follow us on Twitter and smash that notification button so you know when we go live. Shout out to Tom again, the GOAT journalist when it comes to this, and giving us a very nuanced approach. As you said, to summarize, if you want to go back, first probably out of the stream, a lot of content regarding the SHEIKH JASSIM bid. For those who tuned in late, make sure you follow Tom at TomJournalist1 on Twitter. I'm sure I'm probably going to be live again at some point this week regarding Twitter, but obviously transfers as well. And hopefully we'll start to get the transfer show done soon. So peace out, everybody in the chat. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a nice day, everyone. And cheers. Peace.
Peace.